I'm Ed. We're currently in West Cambridgeshire in the UK, and I just wanted to show you a little bit about my farm. So we're currently in the middle of the cropping season. It's May in the UK right now. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking a bit more about the crops, seeing how they're growing, and seeing some of the effects of these different management systems out on the farm. So here we are about 320 hectares of combinable crops. So on our farm, we do carbon farming with Agreena. Carbon farming for us is changing the way we establish our crops and some of the management techniques in order to think directly about carbon, how it is cycling on our lands and how it affects our cropping systems. So in the last 5 years, we've actually transitioned to using a direct drill, and we do a lot more cover cropping and catch cropping in between our cash crops. And we are using a little bit less man-made fertilizer. Since we've been carbon farming, we've noticed some changes to the crop. We haven't had much rain here in the UK in the last 2 months, but we've noticed that for the direct drill crops, they look greener and they look healthier because they've got deeper root systems, and they are actually have access to more water, because as the soil changes and gets more organic matter and organic carbon in the soil, they have access to a greater amount of water. So why don't we go to one of the fields now and have a look at my pea crop. So we're standing in a 30-hectare block of combinable peas, and these peas have all been direct drilled back in the beginning of April. Now, after about 6 weeks, they are up and growing away quite nicely. Peas are known as one of the hardest crops to make a successful establishment through direct drilling because they're very sensitive to compaction, and they're also they don't like waterlogging around the seed. So the fact that these are up and away is really encouraging. This particular field has been in direct drilling scenario for 4 years. And during that time, the soil structure has changed, and it's actually managed to start naturally aggregating, getting a good bit of drainage, so its infiltration rates have improved, and that is shown by the fact that these peas are up and growing and have got the potential to be a good crop. So the fact that the plant residue from the previous cash crop is still on the surface is an example of how carbon farming actually changes slightly how we're doing things. The worms that are in the soil right now that are more prevalent when you are actually direct drilling are going to be pulling the straw down into the soil, into their burrows, and eating it, and turning the plant residue into nutrients that are in a plant available format, which is really important. As you can see, these peas have actually rooted quite well. You can see as we dig these up, the nodules on the pea roots, which contain the bacteria that fix the nitrogen and take nitrogen from the atmosphere and put it into the soil. This is an example of how legumes in the rotation can make a farmer less reliant on man-made fertilizer and can really help with your whole farm rotation. So we're going to come back here in a few weeks' time to see how these peas get on. And I've also planted some flower margins next to the crop, to try and encourage some beneficial insects to try and help with the pest problems that are associated with growing a crop like peas. So we're going to come back and see how they get on. So we're back in the pea field. It's the middle of June right now. It's been a month since we last visited here, and we've just come to have a look and see how the peas are getting on. So we were pretty lucky. We've had 48 mil of rain in the last 2 weeks, and that's been perfect for the crops. They've taken up the moisture, and now we've got lots of sunshine, and they're growing on really well. So if we're thinking about carbon farming, this pea cash crop was established direct drilled into a cover crop, which covered the ground over winter, and we can now see that the peas are growing on really well, and they'll be ready for harvest in about 5-6 weeks. Since we've been direct drilling, we've seen a much higher number of earthworms on our soil, and we've seen evidence where the plant residue from the previous cash crop is heaped up together in a worm midden, and it's pulled down underground where the worm digests the plant residue, breaks it down and turns it into nutrients that's then available for the next crop. That is a really good example of carbon farming and of cycling crop residue. So as I mentioned in the last episode, we've planted a strip of wildflowers along the edge of the field of the peas. The idea there is to try and encourage beneficial insects, which are natural predators of some of the crop pests that we get in a crop like peas. So in the past, we've had problems with pests like pea moth, with pea aphid and pea and bean weevil. So with some of the habitat that we've made along the edge of the field, we're trying to encourage insects, things like lacewing, things like parasitic wasp, ladybird larvae, and general rove beetles, ground beetles and spiders, all of the things that naturally predate some of the crop pests. And this is all part of our integrated pest management plan. So although the flower margins aren't part of my Agreena program, they do allow me to grow my cash crops in a way that means I have to use less artificial inputs. So now that the peas are growing and we've had some rain, they've got good potential. We should be harvesting them around about the beginning of August. So the next time we'll be back here, the field will look very different and we'll be harvesting. So we're back in our field. It is late July and we are harvesting our peas. It's been really unseasonably hot and dry over the last 2 months here in the east of the UK, and we're actually cutting our peas in July, which we've never done before. We've already completed the wheat yield, and it's been a very relaxed, stress-free harvest because the weather's been so good. So we have a 6-year rotation of different crops. We grow cereals and we grow break crops, and this year some of the break crops are spring peas because I've grown an overwinter cover crop to protect the soil. We have grown these peas without using very much artificial fertilizer, and we are returning the plant residue to the land, and that all helps with the cycling and putting back of carbon. So this is our harvested peas. This is a sample of them, and I'm really hoping they make human consumption. That'll be based on how they look in the lab and whether they're up to spec. So because of the hot, dry conditions we've had over the last 10 weeks, these peas are only yielding 2 tonnes per hectare, but all things considered, we're pretty pleased with that. We are carbon farming on this land, which means that we are producing agricultural food crops, but we're also sequestering carbon and hopefully farming in a more sustainable way. Now that harvest is finished, we're going to go away and we're going to think about what's worked for us and what hasn't, and we're going to make a plan for next year with regard to our carbon programme.